won't hear this on the radio.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. Is the price worth it?
The price, we think the price is worth it.
Listen, I really think the media is...
Because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
Could you look me in my eyes and just lie to me?
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
They burn these fucking people alive because the message they want to convey to you is state power will always win.
You're listening to Below the Tension Podcast.
Open up your eyes, 'cause maybe it's our lies. I'm trying to make them wait.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode. You're listening to a Wednesday episode of the show. Thank you for joining me. And as you all know of the events of this weekend, and the title of this podcast is going to be The News You May Have Missed During the Orlando shooting. And I am going to go over some points quickly about this weekend's events. You all know what happened, or what they're saying happened. There's lots of conspiracy theories out there. A lot of credible sources, eyewitness accounts, swearing that there was a second shooter, and a guy holding a door. There's a lot of weird stuff going on right now, but you all know that. You know what happened. I'm just going to go over a few points. I got a lot of key news here that you may have missed while the media was completely covering this story. I got some tech news. I have some politics and domestic news. I have foreign news. The ISIS leader has been reportedly killed but not confirmed. I have $40 billion in aid to Israel, and I have some continuing coverage of Venezuela and the deteriorating situation down in South America. This podcast is affiliated, is sent out, is syndicated by 3 different areas. I am syndicated by the Voices of Liberty. It was a Ron Paul project. He's moved on, but I had my first episode, the episode I did Saturday, Bye Bye Bernie, published on the site yesterday. I'm really excited about that. Go check it out. I'm also affiliated with the Sovereignty Network, a community of journalists and content creators reporting the revolution of the mind. Check out my page on their website, sovereigntynetwork.com/belowthetension, and also timetofree.us, a community of anarchists. Comment on this podcast, visit their website, timetofree.us, or tweet at them at timetofreeus to join now. Now, obviously what happened this weekend was quite tragic, and I woke up Sunday processing everything. Obviously it had just happened, and I'm part of some Twitter groups, chats, and we were discussing, what had come out and what was going on at the moment. And Sunday, between 9:15 and 9:50 a.m., I stated, "What do you bet this guy is a self-repressed gay? He was probably that guy," when we're referring to someone who's closeted, "got radicalized, then started to hate the guys he was fucking." The third message was, he got jealous and then got enraged that he liked dudes. I guarantee it. I called it the morning after that this guy was a self-repressed gay. Afghanistan is one of the most repressed LGBT communities in the world. His dad was from Afghanistan. Obviously brought that sentiment with him. And it looks like this guy was mad at himself for being gay, and this is the way he sought to revive himself, how he felt he could make amends, quote unquote, for the things he had done with God. Called it. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm not saying that, look at me. I'm just illustrating that I know what I'm talking about. And I'm not like Kobe Bryant throwing them up 50 shots a game and getting 20 points a game. I have a lot of life experience that I draw on to make these predictions. So when I say something, chances are it's rooted in some kind of knowledge or wisdom. So what I'm saying is you should just listen to me. That's what I'm really trying to say. All right, enough of that. So I'm just going to go over some of the reactions to the shooting, and specifically from this Black Lives Matter activist, Sean King. He was the guy a few months ago. His ethnicity, his race is very convoluted and very questionable, and he gained a lot of attention because he looks very, very, very white for a black guy. And he even admits himself his racial background is an unknown. But anyways, that's not the point, is that's how he got to be such a huge figure during this the peak of the Black Lives Matter. But he went to Twitter and wrote some things. First, he wrote, "We could cut mass shootings down by over 75% if our nation banned all white men from this country. Wonder why nobody ever calls for that." Nice racism, buddy. Nice. If you ban 75% of young black men, maybe it would cut down on black crime by 75%. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it a solution. I don't know if he was trying to be sarcastic or trying to make a point there, but being racist in the face of racism isn't what you really should be doing. And then the big doozy, this got, at the time that I printed this out, 10,500 retweets. So this was seen at least over 1 million times. The deadliest mass shootings all have one thing in common. It's not race or mental illness or Islam. It's assault rifles. 12,000 likes, 10,500 retweets. That would be all great and all, but it's patently false. You scumbag. Sean King. You dirty fucking liar. 2 of the 4 most deadly attacks, mass shootings, have not been with assault rifles. Virginia Tech, which was the most deadly attack before Orlando, was done with 2 handguns. Luddy's Cafe, Keeling, Texas, 1 handgun. Now it's Orlando with a 6 Sauer, and then Newtown. So why do you have to lie to try to make your point? What is it with the left and just lying, just bold-faced lying? He's counting on nobody discounting him. So, and that's just everywhere. And I'm going to get into a consolidated list of points that I saw ever since this weekend, and then go step by step refuting them. And then I'm going to get into the news. That's all I got to say about this. And I wrote this on my Facebook page. You can follow it below the tension on Facebook. Let's get some facts straight. Number 1, terror watch list gun loophole. Due process still exists and is specifically designed to protect rights. Being a suspect of a crime doesn't make you a criminal. Being convicted in court does. Having rights and due process is not a loophole. And it's so easy to get on that terrorist watch list. Children and infants end up on it. Even if there was a gun ban on the terror watch list, he wasn't on it. Again, wouldn't have stopped this. And see, that's really also what it comes down to. Bringing up these points And it's not any solution to this problem. None of the stuff I'm hearing would have stopped him. I would get behind some of this stuff and agree with some of these people if they actually came up with things that would have stopped this specific thing. The gun loophole. How can terrorists get guns? He wasn't even on it. Number 3, he was investigated twice for terrorism, but never charged or convicted of a crime. Exactly. Number 4, he was born in America. No immigration reform would have stopped him. Donald Trump. Number 5, no criminal record, no background checks, no amount of background checks would have denied him a gun. Stricter background checks, universal background checks, had no criminal record, had nothing you could deny him on. Number 6, this was clearly premeditated and carefully planned. No cool-off period would have stopped him. Again, well, if there was a 5-day waiting period, he bought him the week of the attack. If he had just had a 5-day waiting period, no, he still would have gone through with it. He would have just bought him a week early. Number 7, 2 out of the 4 most deadly U.S. mass shootings were not carried out by assault rifles. Assault rifle ban! Assault rifle ban! And then going into complete gun bans, number 8, France has very strict gun control, but that didn't stop terrorists from attacking Paris and Belgium. Number 9, gun confiscation bans are the most successful in countries that are islands. Why is it that Japan and Australia and the UK have such successful gun bans? Because they're islands. They don't have a 1,100-mile border with another country. It's easier to control your borders and your imports and your exports when there's a giant sea. And number 10, Islamic countries are undoubtedly and by far the most homophobic in the world. You can look it up on Wikipedia. Just search worst countries to be gay in or whatever. You'll bring up a map. A UN map where the UN countries voted or whatever the case may be. It's a compilation of laws. And guess where all of the laws are that it's illegal and punishable by death to be gay? I'll give you a hint. And speaking of getting a hint, Bangladesh, which has a very large Muslim population, arrests 8,500 suspected radical Islamists. More than 8,500 people were detained in the crackdown on violence on secular activists and religious minorities, Bangladesh police said. The security operation against suspected Islamist militants with criminal records began Friday, which was prompted by machete-wielding attacks. Bangladesh gets it. And that's getting really to one of the roots of the problems. Is people like to say that there's only a fraction of a percent of Muslims that actually engage in terrorism or ISIS and stuff like that. And that's true. But if you look at the approval ratings for the things that these people are doing, it's much higher. You ask anyone in these Islam countries, these Muslim countries, hey, do you think gays should be jailed or arrested or killed? Yeah, they do. So we have to take measures to protect ourselves, obviously. And really the only way you're going to do that is to protect yourself. But also, the communities have to reject this. Take a page from Bangladesh's book. Okay, enough of all that. Now I'm going to get into some of the news that you probably missed because of all the media coverage on Orlando. And first, starting off with some Gary Johnson news. I did a poll on Twitter, and this poll got way more traction and votes than I've ever had, and a lot bigger than a lot of polls I've ever seen. 271 people, fellow libertarians, voted in this poll. And I asked, considering Gary Johnson's campaign is looking more and more viable, which I covered in last week's episode, should libertarians get behind him? 271 people voted. So I think that's a pretty good metric on what the current attitude is within the liberty movement. And the results shocked me, honestly. 54% said yes, get behind him, be pragmatic. 46% said no, and that Ron Paul was really the only person that they would ever support. Incredible. So still an 8-point spread, a clear victory for the yes, but I thought it would be more one way or the other. It surprised me that it was that close to being split. So you can check that out on my Twitter at Slav Libertarian. You can check out the results of that. Pretty good stuff. And probably in a couple weeks, I will ask that again and see what kind of results we get again. All right, moving into politics and domestic news. Sanders and Clinton meet as Clinton wins the D.C. primary. That was the last one, thank God. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders met privately in the Capitol Hilton Tuesday evening, just after Clinton won the final contest, the District of Columbia. The meeting came as a Vermont senator has begun signaling that his campaign is soon to close, though Sanders' aides say he's not expected to immediately endorse Clinton. But endorse her, he will nonetheless. Sorry, Bernie Sanders fans. Supreme Court rules Puerto Rico can't restructure its debt. Puerto Rico cannot restructure its debt to stave off a financial crisis, Supreme Court ruled on Monday. In a 5-2 ruling, the justices said the Constitution does not allow Puerto Rico to rewrite a statute Congress enacted in 1984. The plain text of the Bankruptcy Code begins and ends with our analysis, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote. It's unambiguous language that the Bankruptcy Code prevents Puerto Rico from writing its own laws. So basically, they try to write a law writing themselves out of debt, which the Supreme Court smacked down, obviously. And some interesting federal news. Report shows 99% of federal workers are fully successful or better at their work. Is this credible? Do you think? Have you ever worked for the government, or have you ever had to interact with a federal employee or any type of government employee? DMV ring a bell for you? Is it likely that 99% of staffers in any workplace are fully successful or better? That's how highly federal employees are rated, according to a report by the Government Accountability Office. The GOA looked at 2013 ratings for more than 1.2 million staffers, and only 3.3% were rated as minimally successful, and 0.0% were rated as unacceptable. If the 99% figure is exaggerated, is it the fault of the evaluation system, or the evaluators or the supervisors who rate their staff? Both, says William Dugan, president of the National Federation of Federal Employees. Yeah, he's not going to say anything bad. Most managers have a difficult time having frank and honest discussions about performance. Okay. I do believe that by and large, a very large percentage of federal employees are doing a fine job. Okay. Is it 99% though? I'm not convinced. I think it's a little high. A little? Just a tiny bit high? You want to know why it's 99%? Because there's no incentive for state or government employees to excel. They have no product to sell. They have no service to provide. It doesn't matter if nobody ever goes to the post office again. You have to. It doesn't matter if nobody ever wants to go back to the DMV again. You have to. They don't care if their performance is good or not. So why not just give everyone perfect scores? It doesn't matter anyways. Whereas in the private sector, you want to have real feedback on your employees because your business, it depends on it. You want to know who your bad employees are so you can sell the most stuff or provide the best service. You'll go out of business if all of your employees are at 99%, because that's not true, and you can't identify who's the problem, and then you're going to suck. So, yeah. A little high? I think so. Alright. I'm going to go with tech news next. Let's go with tech. I always put tech last, but this is pretty cool. We got 2 stories here. For the second time, astronomers have detected gravitational waves. Ooh. They've done it again. For the second time this year and ever, astronomers have announced the detection of gravitational waves, ripples in the space-time continuum created by a collision of 2 faraway black holes. That sounds fucking awesome. This chirp, or space-time disturbance, was created by a pair of colliding black holes. What? Oh my god. Take me, CERN. I want to smash some atoms. That's so fucking cool. Okay, I'm going to stop nerding out. Into some disturbing tech news. The U.S. Air Force says computer crash has wiped out decades of data. The Air Force has just lost thousands of Inspector General records after a database crash. The database was corrupted about a month ago. The company, Lockheed Martin, spent 2 weeks trying to recover the information before informing the Air Force of the loss June 6th. The automated case tracking system holds the entire Inspector General records for complaints, investigations, appeals, FOIA requests dating back to 2004. Everything's gone. We estimate we've lost information for more than 100,000 cases. The database has crashed. There is no data. Interesting. Kind of like how the CIA keeps misplacing that torture report, and the hard copy and the digital copy both were deleted. Interesting. All right. Moving on to foreign policy and world news. U.S. military officials skeptical of reports ISIS leader al-Baghdadi was killed. Pentagon officials have said on Tuesday that they were skeptical about reports that an airstrike from a U.S.-led coalition in Syria killed Islamic State terror leader Abdul Akbar al-Baghdadi. Similar claims have emerged in the past for officials to only debunk them later. An ISIS-linked news agency, Al-Mak, reported the airstrike killed al-Baghdadi in Iraq on Sunday. So I will keep a close eye on that and see if that pans out. Hopefully, he did get killed. Not to say that I endorse American militarism around the world, but that dude is also pretty fucking evil. 40 billion, speaking of evil, 40 billion in aid to Israel will be the largest ever to any country, Susan Rice says. Oh, yeah. U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice said the proposed military aid package to Israel is larger than any United States has ever given any country. You know, like, I don't know, Sudan, or I don't know, the Democratic Republic of Congo, or hell, even Venezuela. Nah, they don't need $40 billion. Israel does. The 10-year aid program would give Israel $40 billion to upgrade its military aircraft, missile defense systems, and defense against militants in Lebanon, Gaza Strip, Al-Qaeda, and Islamic State. With $3.1 billion in 2015, Israel is the biggest beneficiary of foreign aid. Well, you got to top that, double down. Being the top beneficiary isn't enough. You got to be more. You got to double top. You got to be like more top. Officials from Israel and the United States have said a $4 billion package is already under consideration for 2016. Sorry, triple best. This year's double best, next year triple best. Really? Israel can't take care of their damn selves? NATO sends troops to deter Russia. Putin orders snap checks. So the situation in Ukraine and along the east is escalating. I've covered some of that news on last week's episode. You can check it out on YouTube, Below the Tension, Bye Bye Bernie, episode 9. Britain, Germany, and the United States advanced plans on Tuesday to spearhead a new NATO force on Russia's border from next year. Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered snap checks of combat readiness across his armed forces. Weeks before the critical NATO summit in Warsaw, 3 of NATO's biggest military powers said that they would each command a battalion across the eastern flank to help deter any show of force, such as the one deployed by Moscow in Crimea in 2014. Yes, ratchet that shit up. Let's just increase the tensions. That'll work. But, if dear leader Trump gets in there, he's going to go fight bears with Putin, so it'll be okay. Poll shows increasing support for Brexit. Britain's Leave campaign opened a 7-point lead over the Remain ahead of the referendum. According to the YouGov poll for The Times, Leave had a 46% support compared to 39% for Remain. 11% remain undecided, while 4% say they will not vote. Interesting. And our last bit of world news here, other escalating tensions from around the world. Afghanistan-Pakistan border clashes killed 2. 2 soldiers were killed and 21 others were wounded after border forces exchanged fire. 1 Afghan soldier and 1 Pakistani army major have been killed after border forces exchanged gunfire at the main crossing point between the 2 countries. 22 other people were wounded in the fighting, 10 of them civilians, including children. Tensions have been brewing over Pakistan's attempt to erect a gate at the border. And Pakistan and Afghanistan have had a trouble history, as well as Pakistan and India. Nobody likes Pakistan, apparently. So, all right. And in our last stack of news, this is our Venezuela updates. Kerry calls for Venezuela to release political prisoners and alleviate shortages. Secretary of State John Kerry on Tuesday called Venezuela's crisis-hit socialist government to release political prisoners, respect freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and alleviate shortages. Speaking at a meeting of the Organization of American States General Assembly in the Dominican Republic, Kerry said Washington was strongly committed to working with members of the states to alleviate Venezuela's troubling situation. And then John Kerry announced high-level talks to ease tensions with Venezuela's socialist government on Tuesday, just hours after he backed a call for a referendum that could force Maduro out. The talks would also be aimed at fostering a dialogue between Venezuela's government and the opposition. So I guess there's some type of diplomacy going on, I suppose. A wave of lootings and food riots in crisis-hit Venezuela has left 3 people dead last week. All 3 were shot during chaotic protests and melees outside of shops, which have become a flashpoint for violence and looting amidst scarcities of basic necessities across the South American country. A policeman and a National Guard sergeant major have been arrested for the killings. More than 10 incidents of looting occur per day. And our last headline on today, hundreds arrested in Venezuela after latest unrest over food. Venezuela's security forces have arrested at least 400 people after the latest bout of looting and food riots in the crisis-hit country. Another death was also reported in the state of Mérida from unrest which broke out sporadically across the country. On Tuesday, violence engulfed the eastern state of Cumana as looters swarmed dozens of shops and security forces struggled to maintain the crowd. There were unconfirmed reports on social media of deaths, but the regional governor of the ruling Socialist Party said there were only 400 people arrested, and the deaths are not linked to looting, he told a local TV station. And he called the looters and vandals. He said the looters and vandals were encouraged by right-wing politicians. I have no doubt they paid them and this was planned. You're a fucking scumbag. Your people are hungry, you idiot. I don't need to encourage anybody to want to punch you in the face for that. And of course, we will continue to monitor that situation very closely. So that is all the news I have for you today. Hopefully, I gave you a good rundown on probably a lot of news that was missed. I had to do a lot of digging to extract these stories, and I did this very, very carefully because I knew I'm already below the tension as it is. I'm trying to give you news that you probably didn't hear about, but this was extra important considering the heavy news weekend and week. So I hope I did a service to you. And if you could do me a service and follow me on Twitter at Slav Libertarian, you can follow me on YouTube, Below the Tension, on Facebook, Below the Tension, or you can subscribe to me on iTunes, Below the Tension. Thank you guys for listening, and have a nice day.